So let's break down 5 key strategies to take our marathon performance to the next level. Now, I'm going to deliberately avoid any specificity around running training programs or prescribing specific intervals or total training loads. I want to ensure that these 5 recommendations can fit into any training approach by any coach. And so this is something that should be able to be leveraged and molded into your own approach to running. But in my experiences, these strategies accomplish a few key elements of success. Number 1, your greatest predictor of performance progression, namely consistency, and by extension, a radically reduced risk of injury or setbacks, no time on the sidelines, in other words. Number 2, you're going to get a boost in the 4 elements that are critical to improve your marathon speed: race day freshness and fitness, increased muscular resilience, a boost in cardiovascular capacity, improved running economy. And then finally, number 3, you're going to get amplified potential of race day success and staying power. So those 3 things wrapped together, that's what we're building these recommendations. So there are 5 of them. Let's dive in. Number 1, ensure that you develop a running lifestyle first and then ramp to a race. This is so important. So many athletes decide to enter a race and think, how many weeks do I need to do to get ready for this marathon? Or where can I pull off the shelf my 16-week marathon program? If you really want to take it to the next level, so many issues occur when you cram for a race. And make no mistake, if you start 16 weeks out, you are cramming for a race. Instead, aim to ramp into a race with a looming deadline off of many, many weeks of work so that you can avoid the risk of fatigue, the risk of injury. So build a massive platform of readiness. In fact, the ramp into a marathon can be much, much shorter than 16 weeks. It could be 8, 9, 10 weeks, but you want to start that from a much higher starting point. If you really want to break to the next level, don't think about preparation lasting 4 months. Instead, embrace the journey, fit running into your lifestyle, build frequency, have fun doing it, maybe do some smaller events, and then once you've really developed the habit and you are highly consistent, then you can turn up the volume and get ready for a race. The second strategy, build all high-intensity conditioning via other disciplines. That's a pretty bold statement. We understand that operating at a higher intensity, especially specific interval-based training, is a catalyst and an important ingredient to any training program. And what I just said there is you should absolutely do it, but you don't have to do it through running. I like athletes to go hard, very hard, at least once or twice every week. In other words, your heart rate is up and it's uncomfortable. Your breathing is labored. It's tough. But you don't have to do this via a running modality. In fact, I love to leverage really safe modalities to develop that cardiovascular conditioning capacity. Now, there are a ton of options that you can leverage here. And many of these provide wonderful cross-pollination into improving your running. In other words, they have a positive impact on running performance. Your rowing, cycling, swimming, stair climbing in a gym, elliptical to some degree, cross-country skiing, all of these channel and fuel up. And so you can develop all of the cardiovascular conditioning at the high intensity through low or non-weight bearing activities. It's incredibly safe and it amplifies the running that you're doing. Number 3, you can develop muscular resilience through high frequency and mostly much easier running. And I will add to that, including walk breaks. So many athletes just run twice a week, 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week. But it's a little bit like learning guitar. Don't just do 2 or 3 sessions a week. Do something every single day. Just a little bit every day. And while seldom tough, and these runs don't tend to promote or produce any real deep fatigue or muscular damage, I absolutely love to develop athletes to running with very high frequency. Many of them, often in prior lives, frequently injured. I have them running almost every day. Very little of these runs are hard. They're seldom long enough to create deep fatigue. There's very low injury risk, but the benefit of this is you get to strengthen and develop the robustness of your tendons, your ligaments, your tissue. You improve your running economy. You get to promote and practice your form and technique on a day-to-day basis. And it's a wonderful route to develop both muscular and cardiovascular conditioning. You truly build resiliency. And by going on this journey, you actually reduce your injury risk and your fitness over time, a little bit like sliding an envelope through under a door. It builds, almost comes behind you and whacks you on the back of the head. Now, wrapped around this almost daily ritual, if you want to call it that, of easy, short running. And how long is it? Well, it might be 10 or 15 minutes. It might extend to 20 to 30 minutes. It might move up to 40, 50, even 60 minutes on some of the runs. And so it can be very short on some days and a little bit longer on others. But wrapped around this foundation of running frequency is a few other things. You've got your hard work, and we just talked about that coming through a multi-sport vehicle. You've got 1 or 2 key strength sessions a week that are absolutely central and critical to every athlete getting faster. And then you typically have 2 other runs that will transplant this frequent running that are more key focused. And they tend to be hill-based interval running or longer duration. And the longer duration, I love to do that on soft surface such as trail. And so that's the fundamental building blocks of how we build a marathon programming. High frequency, a lot of it easy. Then you've got some high intensity through multisport. You've got 1 or 2 strength sessions, and you've got a couple of key runs that are going to give you the physiological demands and preparation to get you ready for the race. Those are your building blocks. But at the baseline, build frequency. Don't just rely on 3 or 4 runs a week. Principle number 4, we just talked about this a little bit, and that was hill-based running. Use smart hills to build and develop your strength, your speed, your technique, and your economy. Goodness me, that's a big ROI. Build smart hill training to develop all of those assets. What do I mean by smart? It's at a grade of running or a grade of hill in which it will promote and improve your posture, your form, and your propulsion. That tends to be, depending on the athlete, somewhere between 4, 5, and 6% gradient. Because what we don't want to do is have the hill be so steep that you end up hiking up the hill. In other words, lifting the knee. Instead, we want propulsive development of the run, promoting activation of the muscles at the rear of the body. So your glutes, your hamstrings, your calf, and like the spring, the end of the foot, pushing up the hill. And so once the grade goes above 6%, most athletes fall into letting their nose drop and lifting their knees, a little bit like hiking uphill. That's not really providing value. Some slightly shallower 4, 5, or 6% grade provides resistance, but it tends to promote great posture, great propulsive elements, and all of the fundamental elements that lead into improved form and economy. And so this not too steep grade promotes those elements. You are going to get faster. And by the way, they are significantly less risk than you going to your local high school track and running very, very fast in circles. One little tool to this as well, at this shallower grade, it's actually really good to run down. You don't need to run down hard, but running down with good form and good leg speed can really promote good minimal ground contact time, but also some muscular resilience in the quads, which in marathon running tend to be the ones that get beaten up a lot. So going uphill as the training stimulus and where it's more demanding, downhill for added resilience and a little bit of leg speed is a really, really good tool. And then strategy number 5 is develop a smart and what I would call modern fueling strategy. This becomes more important the longer that your marathon will take. In other words, for an elite marathon runner that's running between 2 and 2.5 hours, you're going to have slightly less demand because you're just not out there longer. You will need caloric support, but you're right on the thin edge of probably getting away with relatively minimal support and no performance decline. But as soon as you start moving up to 2:45, 3, 3:15, 3:30, 4, 4:30, 5 hours and beyond, then you're going to have an increasing dependence on additional hydration to prevent performance decline and exogenous fuel. In other words, calories that you are consuming often via blocks or gels or that type of thing to ensure your performance can improve. All of the latest research, as well as the observational application, have highlighted a radical shift in fueling for endurance events over the course of the last few years. And what we started to see is a couple of things. Number one, athletes have a greater capacity to absorb calories taken in than we ever thought was possible. And that's because of some latest research that we've seen, also some training stimulus where you can actually train the gut to improve it, as well as the quality of the products have really improved over the last 4 or 5 years. And so, in other words, you can actually absorb more than we thought you could, and that's good. But more than that, we're also seeing a positive performance impact from doing so. In other words, we are seeing athletes do better when they are consuming 60, 70, 80, 90 grams of carbohydrate every hour. Now, it needs to be the right carbohydrate. And you need to add to that hydration with electrolytes in it. When you have hydration with electrolytes and consistent fueling, it will yield faster performance over the course of a marathon, period. And so these 5 strategies are absolutely critical. Fueling, as we talked about it, smart hills, incredibly important and beneficial as we go through, developing muscular resilience through frequency running, get a lot of your high-intensity training through other modalities from running, and make sure that you go the long-term strategy on this. If you're getting ready for a marathon, like a pinball, using 16, 20, 12-week programs, whatever it is, you are going to be in high risk of frustration. Now, I'm going to give you one more coaching bonus here. So we're going to do bonus strategy number 6, and that is to embrace clustered and split runs. Let me dig into this a little bit. Most athletes understandably fear being ready for the distance. And it's no surprise we started the show. It's daunting. And so they build their confidence and what they perceive as their readiness by big miles and a high number of hours of running in single sessions, the long run. Well, a really smart way for you to build confidence and muscular readiness without the risk is to broaden your perspective. Think about accumulating running miles that you feel are necessary over the course of not just a single run, but maybe 2 sessions in a day, or a cluster of runs over 2 to 3 days, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you run multiple days in a row and extend that one big run and spread it over 3 days, you can accumulate a marathon or more's worth of running that's all done with your best form, lower risk of injury, probably a slightly faster pace, and you've got the reward of exactly the same, if not better, conditioning, muscular resilience, and freshness. It's going to actually improve the quality of each run. And so the one added bonus of taking this approach is that when you're on the bus on the way to your marathon, and you sit down next to you and you meet some guy called Gary from Chicago who's got all of the T-shirts, and he starts talking about himself and finally says to you, by the way, what's your longest run you've done to get ready for this thing? You can have the joy and privilege of saying 12 miles or 14 miles or 16 miles. And he's going to look at you in disgust and think, well, you're not ready. But you can just smile inside because it's fine for Gary to think you're underprepared, but you'll show up with all of the prerequisites for you to go and have a terrific day. All right, folks, so that's it. Key takeaways of today. Embrace the journey. Embrace multi-sport. Make sure that you're developing a fueling strategy for it. Ensure that you hit high intensity with other modalities. It is a great vehicle of success. And don't think about you getting ready for a marathon as just downloading a plan. It's only going to lead to frustration. Instead, broaden your perspective. You need to dial in sleep. You need to think about strategies of fueling and hydration on a day-to-day basis. You need to ensure your nutrition is good. You need a smart program that integrates into your life. That is how you can be successful. I hope that helps. If you need anything at all, info@purplepatchfitness.com. We'll see you next time.